Don't settle for bad socks. Get comfort and grip at an affordable price with Pure Grip Socks Pro. Choose from 18 different colors at puregripsocks.com.
We did one of these right at the start of 2024, but since then Nike have made some changes to their lineup that inevitably will change your buying decisions if you're on the market for a new pair of Nike football boots. So with that in mind, because everybody loves ranking videos, I'm going to be ranking every top-end Nike football boot from worst to best. Keeping in mind that of these 6 boots, there really isn't a bad one, meaning that depending on personal preference, any one of them might be the best option for you. So just keep that in mind as we do these rankings. It's also the reason why along the way, I'll be explaining the good as well as the bad to every one of these, because none of them are perfect, as well as potentially some alternatives you might want to consider if perhaps these aren't exactly what you're looking for. But if you are for sure set on some new Nike boots, you can pick up all of them below their normal retail prices by way of some exclusive SR4U coupon codes by checking out the links down below. And as always, if you enjoy the ranking videos, perhaps want to see more on the channel, don't forget to drop a like on this one and make sure you're subscribed if you haven't already so you don't miss out on my reviews of all the latest football boots of 2024. Starting with what I would argue is pretty easily Nike's worst pair of football boots, but also keeping in mind that they cost less than half as much as all the other ones that we'll be featuring in this video. The Nike Premier 3 with its $110 retail price is unfortunately the last standing natural leather football boot on offer in Nike's lineup. And despite its 6th place out of 6 ranking, it's still a really solid pair of football boots in terms of what you get for the money. Certainly if you're after something with a natural leather upper, what you get in the forefoot here is fairly soft, and the more traditional construction with the central lacing system and U-throat design really does make this a very approachable football boot for somebody that's looking for really a no-nonsense, slip them on your feet, tie the laces tight, and go out and play type of feel. The sole plate and stud pattern is definitely more on the traditional side in terms of the traction on offer, as well as the overall flexibility. There's little to no break-in time required, and again, if you're just looking for something that's super comfortable, it's hard to beat natural leather. Unfortunately, the kangaroo leather days of the Nike Premier are over, and that's not to say that the quality of the leather they're using is bad, but it certainly isn't what it used to be, and at $110, there are definitely alternatives. I think a top option that comes to mind that's technically a little bit less expensive would be the Adidas Copa Gloro 2, retailing for $100. Nonetheless, if you're looking to dabble into leather football boots without breaking the bank, the Nike Premier 3 is a really solid option. At the 5 spot, I have the Nike Tiempo Legend 10 Elite, which I happen to think is an excellent pair of football boots, but unfortunately for longtime fans of the Tiempo series, it's not the Tiempo that they were hoping for, with the main reason being not just the lack of kangaroo leather, but the lack of natural leather at all, swapping out a natural material for a fully synthetic Fly Touch Plus synthetic, effectively an evolution of Nike's Kangolite material, and what is admittedly one of the best synthetic leathers currently on the market. I'm a big fan of the Adidas Predator series right now, but if the Predator had this Fly Touch Plus material, it would honestly be that much better. For a synthetic, I think it does actually have some very leather-like qualities. The only downside is that you do lose out on that little bit of stretch and kind of molding to the shape of your foot specifically that you really only get from a natural leather material. In terms of the longevity of shape retention, obviously the synthetic is a little bit better, but it does make for a different feel compared to natural leather. The touch on the ball does have that surprisingly leather-like dampened sensation, despite being definitely on the thinner side. And as far as surface texture is concerned, despite really just looking like a natural leather grain, it does have a little bit of additional grip that normal leather uppers typically wouldn't have. The sole plate and stud pattern is pretty much classic Tiempo, really nothing to go crazy about there, and as an overall package, the boots are also surprisingly lightweight. While many fans of the Tiempo series might argue that this isn't a true Tiempo, what you could compare it directly to is a reincarnation of the Nike CTR 360 Maestri series, with this again basically just being an evolution of Kangalite material and pretty much taking over for where the CTR 360 Maestri 3 left off. For somebody looking for a boot that offers a leather-like feel without actually being leather, the Tiempo Legend 10 Elite at $240 is a really solid option. The only thing to keep in mind is the first takedown model Legend 10 Pro at $150 offers pretty well 95% of the same experience, making it a little bit difficult to justify the top-end price point of the Elite model for what is realistically no real gains in fit, comfort, performance, or truthfully, anything that most people are going to notice. Which brings us to the 4th spot, where I've picked the Nike Phantom Luna 2 Elite. A great pair of football boots, don't get me wrong, but one that arguably doesn't really need to exist. Where all you really get for $285 with the Luna 2 is a mid-cut collar, where for $260 you can get the exact same football boot without some extra material around your ankle that at the end of the day has no real impact on the performance or playing experience of the boots. I know a lot of people really like mid-cut collars, and if that's you, I suppose that extra $25 is justified, but at the end of the day, this was really Nike trying to fabricate a Vapor Superfly type situation within the Phantom series, and realistically, there is no real heritage to the Phantom Luna. I know the Vapor Superfly thing has kind of boiled down to the same thing that the GX2 and Luna 2 are, but at least once upon a time, the Vapor and Superfly were completely different football boots. That was, however, never the case with the Phantoms. Mid-cut collar and high price tag aside, the grip knit upper of the current generation of Elite model Phantoms is fantastic. It basically gives you that soft, slightly padded fly knit feel with this grippy, almost silicone type feel on the surface that really does give you tons of extra grip on the ball without the added bulk. The equivalent of this would be something like the strike elements on the Adidas Predator series. However, that's rubber sitting on top of what is definitely a much firmer material in the Hybrid Touch 2.0, where with the new Phantoms, this grip knit basically gives you that slightly padded touch on the ball as well as additional grip with significantly less layers and ultimately significantly less bulk. Granted, extra grip on the ball isn't for everybody, and if that's not your preference, I think something like the New Balance Tequila V4 Plus Pro Low or even the Puma Future would be a great option if you're still after kind of that sock-like knitted feel to the upper. And then as far as what they've done with the sole plate, that is actually a carryover from the original Phantom Luna, arguably an even more unnecessary pair of football boots. And while there's definitely some hate around this circle of 5 different bladed studs that are supposed to prioritize rotational movements when in fact they just dig into the ground and stay stuck like any other bladed stud pattern would, it still provides very aggressive traction, and the sole plate as a whole feels nice and solid underfoot. If you're looking for a super comfortable, slightly padded knitted upper feel with a mid-cut design, additional grip on the ball, and relatively aggressive traction, the Luna 2 is, like I said, a really solid option despite its almost unnecessary presence in Nike's lineup. Which brings us into the top 3, where I have another pair of mid-cut football boots, these specifically being the Zoom Mercurials Superfly 10 Elites, where I have these at the 3 spot, again, partially because of the price tag and the lack of benefit for the premium that you pay. This is a pair of football boots that retails for $285, which is a $25 premium over the Vapor 16 that effectively offers all the same fit, feel, and performance characteristics, but doesn't give you this mid-cut elasticated fly knit wrapping around your ankle. Where now that we're 10 years on from the Superfly 4 and Magista Obra, more or less the OG modern mid-cut football boots, I think people have come to understand that this doesn't really do anything for the benefit of performance. It certainly doesn't provide ankle support, despite what a lot of people seem to believe. And unless you just absolutely love the idea of a mid-cut collar, either because of the way that it feels or the way that it looks, you don't really need it. With that in mind, other than adding a couple extra grams of weight, it certainly doesn't hurt the performance of what is an excellent pair of football boots in this latest generation of Mercurial. Obviously, this being a Superfly, I think a lot of longtime fans of the series have been screaming for a bit of variation between the Vapor and the Superfly. Unfortunately, not the case this time around. However, the addition of grip knit on the upper, at least the top side, along with Atom knit as well as Fly knit, creates an experience from a pair of Mercurials that we've truly never had before, in that the upper is much softer and much more sock-like than what we've had from the last couple generations. Certainly when you compare this to Superfly 9 or Vapor 15, this is significantly softer and more pliable, but it still maintains that super raw barefoot feel, just in a wrap around your foot that is significantly more comfortable. And then of course the addition of grip knit just gives you that extra grip on the ball that we've genuinely never had from a pair of Mercs before. Grip knit, of course, being technically the same material found on the Nike Phantom series right now. However, the grip provided by this material is a little bit less sticky than what you'll find from the Phantoms. The sole plate and stud pattern has also been completely redesigned from the previous generation, offering, I would argue, a little bit more of a responsive feel, with traction reverting back again to kind of what they've done in the past with these chevron bladed studs on the FG layout, but also this kind of rippling effect of very small studs running through the entire middle section of the forefoot to allow for more even pressure distribution for the 3/4 length zoom unit carrying over from the Vapor 15 and Superfly 9, making it feel that much more noticeable. Despite the criticism though, this is a top-notch pair of football boots that honestly don't have a true alternative, especially if you're looking for all of the new Mercurial features along with a mid-cut design. It truly is a one of one in today's current football boot market. Leading us into the 2 spot, where if you saw the original rankings list, you'll notice that the former number 1 is now the number 2. The Nike Phantom GX2 Elite is still, however, a fantastic pair of football boots that you really can't go wrong with. As discussed with the Luna 2, the GX2 really does offer a nice blend of softness, sock-like feel, and of course that additional grip by way of its grip knit upper construction. The off-centered lacing system allows for a great overall fit. Certainly out of Nike's entire lineup, I think this is probably the most friendly to wider foot types if you do need that little bit of extra width, particularly through the forefoot as well as the midfoot. The heel construction, while again technically the same as the mid-cut model, because of the bigger opening due to the low-cut design, I think it's just going to be more comfortable for the vast majority, where you have this softer upper section, which is something that Nike seems to be doing a lot lately with their higher-end football boots, making this kind of a little bit closer to a lot of the pro issue stuff. And then as far as the sole plate and stud pattern is concerned, again, I know it's definitely not everybody's favorite, but if you're looking for aggressive bladed traction, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this FG layout. And if you prefer something perhaps a little bit more traditional, the AG Pro model swaps out the blades for some conical studs and also gives you a sole plate design much more like the original Phantom GX, which in turn also ends up feeling a little bit more flexible. It's just a different option that is available to you if you just absolutely hate this Luna 1 generation sole plate and stud pattern. It might not carry the same hype as the original Phantom GX did, but the GX2 is a phenomenal, extremely well-rounded pair of football boots. Leaving the Nike Zoom Mercurial Vapor 16 Elite, in my opinion, as the number 1 ranked Nike football boot in 2024. With the Vapor 16 being really the perfect example of a modern pair of football boots in terms of cramming as much tech as possible, all of which feels like it performs to the highest possible standard, but also being cohesive and I think most importantly, super comfortable. That for me is one of the major differences coming from the previous generation of Mercurial, where I know a lot of people liked that Vapor Posit Plus upper from the Vapor 15 and Superfly 9 because of the slightly stiffer kind of raw synthetic feel that it has, relating back to the very early Teijin synthetic days of the Mercurial series that so many people were big fans of. But for those that loved the Flyknit era of the Nike Mercurial, most notably the Vapor 13 and Superfly 7. That's kind of what Nike have gone back to with this new grip knit, atom knit, fly knit upper, and the difference is night and day. They fit incredibly well, they're super comfortable. The low cut design of the Vapor, again with a slightly softer heel section, makes the break-in pretty well non-existent. They still fit tight like a pair of Mercurials should, but because of the much more pliable upper, they end up feeling a lot more forgiving in terms of how they wrap your foot. The grip knit is going to be a love or hate feature, where if you're not a fan of having that additional grip on the ball, these might not be your cup of tea. However, at $160, you do have the option of the Vapor 16 Pro, which basically gives you a full fly knit upper without the grip on the surface, and honestly, a very similar experience in terms of giving you that tight Mercurial wrap. However, you do lose out on that 3/4 length zoom unit that I think is also a fantastic feature of that top-end Elite model. With the new sole plate design, it's particularly noticeable and very comfortable underfoot, giving you impact protection unlike any other football boot on the market, with an FG layout that is pretty much as aggressive as anything. I know a lot of people are pretty upset with the aesthetics of the new Mercs being so similar to the model that they replace, but physically, I would argue that they are better in just about every single way.